Honestly, the subject of today's video might be the most impossible rookie from the 2024 class. At one point, he was a 0-star recruit with just one FBS offer. He came out of South Dakota, a place not really known for producing big-time talent, and only got an opportunity to walk on at a Big Ten school because his grandpa had a connection with one of the assistant coaches. He ended up getting a chance to walk on at Illinois, and then from there became a captain, got a scholarship, and has now played his way into the NFL, where he was a 4th-round pick to the Cardinals and could have a legit big-time future in the NFL. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Tip Reiman. He might be one of the most impossible rookies we've ever seen, and today we're going to tell his story, go through his wild journey, and talk about his potential future with the Cards and how he could do in the league. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, or the NFL for that matter, be sure to take a quick moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the impossible rise of Tip Reiman. Honestly, this guy's story puts to bed the saying that nice guys finish last. There are few people who are nicer, more dedicated, or more hardworking than Tip Reiman. He ended up growing up in the humble state of South Dakota, and the only other player I really know from that state is Ohio State quarterback Lincoln Kienholz. He said, quote, "From the day that I was born, my mom and dad would tell me stories about how aggressive and physical I was. I get kicked out of flag football practice for tackling or making any non-contact sport a contact sport. It's innately in me." He said, quote, "Growing up, I loved Swiss Army knives because they could do everything and I felt like one of those." This is eventually how Tip would be on the football field too. I'm also kind of intrigued why his name is Tip, but I couldn't really find anything on that. The story really begins in South Dakota as it starts in the city of Rapid City. He ended up going to O'Gorman High School as he began his career there as both a linebacker and a edge rusher. At that time, the NFL was very far away. He said, quote, "There's always stepping stones and everything that needed to take place to get here, and that was always in the cards, and you can ask anybody from my childhood, this has always been the dream," Reiman said. Tip would end up becoming a star in high school and was always a physical specimen, but was also all over the place and all over the city, which didn't help his stability. He was recruited at multiple positions during his high school career, but after transferring from St. Thomas More to O'Gorman during his junior season, it was a tough time for him. He said, quote, "It's one of those experiences that'll put you through a mirror a little bit, but sometimes isolation is good. You get to know yourself a little bit better, and you get to know who you are when there's nothing around and you're up against a rock." Tight end would end up becoming the perfect fit for him when he got to high school, but it didn't exactly lead to a ton of success. His high school coach said, quote, "When he first came, he was being recruited more as a defensive player, so that's kind of where he wanted to play, but it wasn't really the best fit for our team." Tip then said, quote, "Coach Pop helped me find my niche at tight end and really used me in a versatile way, so it's just kind of fit." But ultimately, this switch would help the team, but would cost him his offer sheet. Reiman put his team first at the expense of his own game and switched positions to tight end. One by one, the scholarship offers were taken off the table, and by the time his high school career ended, every FBS offer he had dried up, except for 2 in-state FCS schools. South Dakota and South Dakota State offered the tight end, and while those were fine, he sent his tape to over a couple hundred schools with just a lukewarm response of either "you're not good enough," or "we just don't really want you," or "you need to be better." How did he end up at Illinois then? That's kind of the question that everybody's probably asking, but he landed on the Illini radar with the help from his grandfather. He said, quote, "My grandpa actually did some real estate for one of the coaches and was like, hey, my grandson's pretty decent, and if you like him, and if you don't, it's whatever." Apparently the grandpa sent over the tape, and the coach actually liked him and decided to offer him a preferred walk-on opportunity. At the time, that was Illinois offensive coordinator Rod Smith, as he got a hold of his game film, and Reiman now would have a pretty tough decision to make. He attended several of Illinois' off-season camps and earned that preferred walk-on offer, but his decision to head to Champaign was not an easy one. He said, quote, "Because of the scholarship at South Dakota State and the awesome coaches and staff there, it was tough. South Dakota State is a great place, and I do wish them the best of luck, but I think it's the best fit for me to go to Illinois." His decision would pay great dividends in the end, as he said, quote, "All I need is a foot in the door. That's the thing. If I have a foot in the door, it means I can kick it down, and that's my mentality." He ended up denying his offer to an FCS school to go across the country to Champaign, Illinois, to maybe never see the field and pay full tuition. But he was excited for the chance. He said, quote, "I'm really excited to be in the Big Ten. It's the toughest conference in the nation, and hopefully I'm going to show up and do work." Apparently he was not ranked on any recruiting sites, but how would the wide-eyed walk-on do across the country? Well, let's take a look. Tip would arrive at Illinois, and the move from South Dakota was not exactly an easy one. Reiman told the Illinois Inquirer, quote, "I was dealing with some really hard things." He said he suffered from depression, anxiety, and the feeling that he just didn't fit in. Honestly, I don't necessarily blame him. He was a walk-on player who didn't really know what his future held, but he did believe in himself. Tip understood just how crazy it may have sounded 4 years ago, as when he did arrive, he told his academic advisor that he would have to get his degree in 3.5 years. He said his plan all along was to graduate that month and then jump into preparation for the 2024 NFL Draft. Again, this guy was a walk-on at the time. The person probably thought that he was crazy. And also, it wasn't really looking that good when he first arrived. He arrived on campus and apparently used his walk-on status as an extra source of motivation. He said, quote, "I definitely felt that I had to work harder as a walk-on. I still feel that, and I still feel like a walk-on. I feel like there's always that chip, and there's always a chip on my shoulder, and there's always extra things to prove." In his first weeks on campus, he didn't exactly give the appearance of a future NFL target, as Brett Bielema still remembers all these years later that first spring game. He said, quote, "During that first spring game, there was a play where he didn't move," saying with a smile. "The ball was snapped and he didn't move, and I'm like, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Coach, I've never been in that environment. There's like 8,000 people. I guess coming from South Dakota, he was not used to the crowds. What's crazy is Illinois doesn't exactly have the biggest crowds of the Big Ten either, so it was really a culture shock for him. Eventually, he would work hard enough and he would earn a scholarship and would eventually become the starting tight end. This was not an easy feat for him. His first appearance would come in 2020 as he got on the field with special teams. In 2021, he would eventually appear in 3 games and would score his first touchdown on a 15-yard pass in a win over number 20 Minnesota. 2021 was an interesting year for Illinois. In 2022, Reiman ended up becoming a bigger deal as he played in pretty much every single game. He ended up catching a pass in their win over Wyoming, had a touchdown in their win against Virginia, had 39 yards against Nebraska, and then ended up having a career-high 4 catches against Michigan State. In total, he helped Illinois have a breakout year with Chase Brown and Tommy DeVito and all those guys, and they ended up losing to Mississippi State in the Reliquist Bowl. In total, Reiman caught 19 passes for 174 yards and 1 touchdown. Going into his senior year, Reiman was hoping to get onto the NFL radar, and that is exactly what he would end up doing. He caught 2 passes for 33 yards in their win against Toledo, ended up having a touchdown and a loss to Kansas, and then a couple weeks later had a 42-yard catch against Florida Atlantic. He then finished the year strong, having a touchdown against Wisconsin and a touchdown against Minnesota. Unfortunately, they ended up losing some close games at the end, and Illinois would miss out on making a bowl game, so Reiman's final contest was against Northwestern, where he caught 3 passes. While those stats don't exactly pop off the page, he was checking a ton of boxes. He had to claw for that spot through and through, and ultimately he would thank his family for it. His hard work and perseverance had gotten him to this point, but he could not do it without the support of his parents, who would make the 15-hour drive to Champaign for the home games and also help pay for his tuition when he was just a walk-on. As I said, looking back, his role expanded in 2022 because the starting tight end Daniel Barker transferred to Michigan State. He was competing with former blue-chip recruit Luke Ford, but in total, Reiman made 28 starts and played in 45 career games at Illinois. He finished with 41 catches for 420 yards and 5 touchdowns in 4 total seasons with the Illini. What's also worth noting is that he was a team captain during the 2020 season and also married a girl that he met in Illinois and was the only married dude on the team, which is also awesome. In terms of the NFL draft, his raw athleticism and speed was something that scouts and teams were looking at. At the NFL Combine, he caught the eye of scouts and even went popular on social media, as apparently this was just so new to him. He said, quote, "My wife and I were like, I think we need 2 phones. I see all these guys with 2 phones and I'm like, oh, they're big time." He also got attention for making a comment about pigeons not being real, as he said, quote, "Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? How do we know these power lines aren't pigeon recharging stations?" He's referencing the campaign of birds aren't real, and eventually he clarified saying, quote, "It's a joke. I believe in birds, I believe in God, and I'm setting the record straight now." Not only was he a good player, but he had great traits and he had a good personality, and his athletic scores were through the roof. He had a potential to be a hybrid type of player, as since 1987, out of nearly 2,000 tight ends measured, Reiman's score was ranked 10th all time. He worked tirelessly to prepare for the Combine, as he worked on the things he could control both physically and mentally. The results paid off, as he ran a 4.64-yard 40, which was 6th amongst tight ends, had a 7.023 cone drill, and then ended up repping 28 bench press reps. This was a pretty big deal. According to NFL Mock Database, Tip Reiman was a projected 5th-round pick and the 160th overall prospect, who had a less than 1% chance of going in the first round. What would eventually happen was kind of shocking. He was taken in the 3rd round with the 82nd overall pick by the Arizona Cardinals, and it was honestly a little bit of a reach. Yes, he was athletic, but how do tight ends with no more than 19 catches get drafted before day 3? That's what a lot of people were wondering. Well, I guess they just believed in him that much, as his work ethic, his measurables, and his ability to block really sold the Cardinals scouting department. He said he aimed to be a great hybrid at tight end, and he wants to be like Rob Gronkowski or George Kittle. He said blocking's crucial to being a successful tight end, and that is something that he was already doing. Since Jeff Swain was not re-signed this offseason, the Cardinals lacked a solid blocking tight end, and Reiman will fill that role quite immediately. They already have athletic pass catchers in Trey McBride and Elijah Higgins, and while Reiman is athletic, he's going to be seen as more of a monster blocker with pass catching upside. Really just have to wait and see what happens, but Reiman's one of the most impossible rookies. He went from a guy with just one offer coming out of South Dakota to being a walk-on at Illinois and getting drafted in the 3rd round despite having 19 total catches in his career. That's pretty crazy and impossible to me, but what do you guys think? If you're a Cardinals or an Illinois fan, what do you think of Tip Reiman? And who's another rookie or player in the NFL I should cover next? Before you go, don't forget to leave your thoughts down below, leave a like if you're going to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about Trey Benson. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.